Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Are we ready? Let's do it! My name is Wally, I'm an alcoholic. Hi everybody, and by the grace of God in this simple program, I've not found it necessary to take a drink since October 30th of 1988, and for that I'm truly, truly grateful, one day at a time. It's great to be here at IDAA. I want to thank the host committee for the opportunity to be of service at this conference. And before I go any further, I do need to open this meeting with a moment of silence, followed by the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Again, I have so many people to thank for this opportunity. Of course, Stephen and Michael for the invitation, Nancy for doing a lot of the behind-the-scenes work and making sure that we had handouts for the Big Book study, and I'm honored to have been able to share the podium with Catherine G. as she wove her magic, as I like to call it, of taking everybody through all 12 steps in 4 one-hour sessions. What an honor to be a reader. Thank you, thank you. And also, I want to thank all the people behind the scenes here that have been helping put this together. Of course, we got MD Audio Tapes to thank. We got Matt, Mary, and Mary that's at the controls right now reminded me that we actually had a chance to get together about 12 years ago now, 13 years ago now in St. Thomas, Virgin Islands. And of course, Andrea and Darlene up at the bookstore. It's the first time I had a chance to meet them, but I did want to mention that this is the biggest family in the world. I mean, we get the chance to get reconnected with old friends and meet new friends, and I get to do that everywhere I go, traveling around the United States, Canada, and around the world. It's just been a blessing of blessings to get to know each and every one of you during the course of this weekend. I do want to comment briefly on the theme of this year's convention, There's a Solution. I came into AA to prove that I wasn't an alcoholic. That's what got me here. I wasn't one of you, and I went to 2 meetings in 60 days. Yay, me! 2 meetings in 60 days, and what I found out is an alcoholic without alcohol, an alcoholic without a program has nothing to look forward to except restlessness, irritability, and discontentment. And for me, it was that times 1,000. I hit the wall. I went stark raving mad at 60 days, and I crawled into my 3rd meeting and admitted for the first time that I had a problem with alcohol. And this guy comes up, and after the meeting, he says, "My name's Phil, and I'm your sponsor." And I didn't know any different, only 3rd meeting. And I said, "What does that mean?" I said, "I'm going to take you through the steps." "Oh, those steps that were on the wall that they read during the meeting." Yes. And I'm going to do that, but I need to tell you a little bit about me first. He told me some of his story, and then he said, "Do you think you're an alcoholic?" And I said, "I'm not really sure, Phil." And he said, "Well, that doesn't matter. Is your life unmanageable?" And he hooked me with the first step hook. And but the thing that he asked me to do, and this really I found to be disconcerting at the time, he said, do you have a big book of Alcoholics Anonymous? And I said, yes, I do. And he said, have you read it? And I said, no, I haven't. I was being honest with him. He said, I can understand that. That's not a problem. But I need to ask you another question. I said, what is that? He said, can you read? Oh, was I upset with that one? I said, of course I can read. I got a bachelor's degree, I got a master's degree. He said, no, no, no. Most people, when they come into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, cannot comprehend this book. And so usually it's a sponsor who reads the big book to the newcomer, and I will read the appropriate parts of the big book to you if that's necessary. But since you're taking a little bit of umbrage with this, I want to test you. And he told me to start on page 25. There's a solution, which is the theme of the conference. And what a miracle of miracles. I mean, this man was an angel on the ground. If he had given me the book and told me to start on page 1 and read on through, I probably would have tossed it before I got halfway through the doctor's opinion. No, he took me to, there is a solution. And these 2 paragraphs are very, very key to my recovery, and I have to thank Phil for taking me there first, because it helped save my life. In terms of my journey, in addition to being a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous and other 12-step programs, but we're concentrating on AA here, I was elected Arizona Area Archivist in 1992. I became a member of the National Archives Study Committee, reporting to the General Service Office in New York in 1994. And in 1999, I became the overseer of the Dr. Bob and Ann Smith Archives in Akron, Ohio. And just so that everyone, we're all on the same page, I am an unpaid volunteer to the Back to Basics Foundation, which publishes books and other literature with my name on it. I have to make it really clear. I receive no income whatsoever for any book with my name on it. And the reason for that is I consider this to be my 12-step work for which I cannot be paid. That's in keeping with our traditions. So I'm not paid for it. Oh, then how do you do all of this and travel around the country and go here and go there? I'm a 100% disabled Vietnam War veteran, and I get a check every month from the government. A small one, but that's what covers my expenses for doing this traveling. So I have to thank the federal government, in addition to the host committee for IDAA, for being here. And in terms of the journey, an archivist is a person who is a keeper of AA's records, and I am a keeper of AA's history. I'm the only person in AA that's been given open access to every archival collection in the United States and Canada. It was to write the history of the intergroup in the central offices in the mid-1990s. I do have more than 200,000 pages of AA history. I have over 5,000 books on AA history. I am a keeper of the records. I also wanted to talk about, again, in terms of MD tapes and encore tapes. I mean, these people are the keepers of the records too. Because of our tradition of anonymity, it is the CDs that record our history. And that's why it's so important that we have these events tape recorded, and they have archival repositories, and you can call or email or get CDs with all the list of the tapes that are available, including one that I didn't know that you even had for my spiritual guide for 10 years, James H. I'll talk about him a little bit further in a couple minutes. But what happened on that journey? I was taken through the steps in about 4 hours and in less than a week time total. And when I had 1 year of sobriety, I was doing the deal and being of service the best I could. And at 1 year of sobriety, my sponsor sat me down and said, "Wally, I'm not going to be alive much longer." And he does pass away 8 weeks later. But he said, "If you remember this one thing, you may not find it necessary to take a drink for the rest of your life, whether I'm here or not." What's that, Phil? If you don't know where we came from, you'll never know what a miracle this program truly is. Well, I didn't know where we came from, and I didn't care where we came from. I'm a scientist. I do black and white. I solve equations, and I study molecules at the submolecular level. I don't do history. I don't do gray. I want black and white. And I find it ironic that God has such a great sense of humor, making an archivist historian out of somebody who hated history. And I did, but when he said, if you don't know where we came from, you'll never know what a miracle this program truly is, I decided to get on an airplane and fly to Akron and see if I could find out where we came from. And I just got on a red eye out of Tucson on a Saturday night and got to Akron on a Sunday morning, and I called the intergroup office, and they told me that there was a meeting at Dr. Bob's home. Well, first I asked if there was a Dr. Bob's home, and they said, yes, there was. I didn't know that. They said it wasn't available for anybody to visit until a couple years ago. Some members of AA have purchased it, and they're in the process of refurbishing it back to the way it was in the summer of 1935. And so I'm there on a Sunday, and it turns out to be the Sunday that they have a meeting there. And they only have one meeting a year in Dr. Bob's living room. And I'm there on November 16th, 1989, not even knowing if there was a Dr. Bob's house. And what they had done is they'd taken the furniture out of the living room, and they'd put a little table about the size of the one up here at the lectern area, put 8 chairs around it, and it was a speaker meeting. And the only requirement to speak is you had to have 40 years of sobriety. 40. Here I am standing in the doorway. It's a small house, and there's about 70 people in the house, and we were jammed in pretty tight, and I was actually standing in the doorway for the next 3 hours, listening to these 8 old-timers, all of whom had been sponsored by Dr. Bob, all of whom had been taken through the steps in one day, and every one of them was sponsoring within a week. And you can't say that, oh, it's different today. No, it isn't. It's the same program then as it is today. Trust God, clean house, and help others. And helping others was an integral part of the journey. So that's what they were doing, was being of service to others, and they were talking about it 40 and 42 and 46 and 52 years later when I'm standing in that doorway. And I had a conversion experience, and I dedicated my life right there to studying the history of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I've been doing that ever since. 6 months later, I called the General Service Office in New York, and I asked Frank M., who was the archivist at the time, I said, Frank, I had a conversion experience in Dr. Bob's living room, and I've been destined to study the history of Alcoholics Anonymous. How do I become an archivist? And I'm 1 year sober, and I don't know any different. And he says, it's easy. You go down and get some business cards made and put your name on it and put archivist under it. And then you are one. So for the next 3 years, I'm going around Arizona and around the country, because I'm now taping old-timers, with Wally P. Archivist. And 3 years later, I'm elected Arizona Area Archivist, and it became a self-fulfilling prophecy. And that's how it came to pass. Again, some of you know that I take people through the steps, and I take people through the steps the way they were taken in the 1940s, and that's where it came from. It came from Dr. Bob's living room. That's where I learned how to do the work. And I'm certainly not the first to do this, and neither is Catherine. This is a person taking a group of AAs through the steps in the late 1940s. And this was in Minnesota. This was Minneapolis, Minnesota, and it was a one-day seminar, just like many of them are today. And you start on step 1 about 9 o'clock in the morning, and by 4:30 in the afternoon, you've taken all 12 steps. So that's how they did it, in conferences, in conventions, just like we did it on Thursday and Friday morning. The tradition, long form of the traditions just come out, and this is Barry C., and he's trying to remain anonymous by wearing the Lone Ranger mask. And I've had a chance to walk with so many of the pioneers, and one of them was James H. And I met James in 1996. By that time, he was already 90 years old and 61 years sober. His sobriety date's December 12th, 1934, one day after Bill Wilson and 6 months before Dr. Bob. He could have been the co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous. He went to meetings with Bill. He was there when Bill decided to leave AA. And Bill and James took a divergent path at that time. Bill saw the Oxford group going downhill fast, and he bailed. And thank God he did, because none of us would be here, because the Oxford group did fade into oblivion. James tried to stay in the Oxford group and save it, and was unsuccessful. So Bill left, and James stayed, and James started going to meetings regularly in the 1980s when his grandson had a drinking problem, and he'd go to a meeting. He said, "This isn't AA. Let's go to another meeting." "Well, this isn't AA. Whatever happened to AA? Whatever happened to Bill's program?" So he came out of retirement in the 1980s to carry Bill's message, because he wasn't here to carry it himself, and he carried it to me so I could help carry it to you. And again, I've been blessed with that opportunity to carry this message on numerous occasions, and had the opportunity to travel all over the world, taking people through the steps in 4 one-hour sessions. There's a recent article that I wrote for the Recovery Today newspaper, and I just want to open in terms of sponsorship with this. And it reads, when a newcomer enters the 12-step community, whether from a treatment center, detox, or the street, he or she passes through a window of opportunity, a time when he or she is most teachable. How long does a person remain in this state? In other words, how much time does it take a newcomer to realize that the pain that he or she is experiencing in recovery is greater than the pain he or she remembers when using? How much time do we have to alleviate this pain? Do we have a year to take this person through the steps? Absolutely not. Do we have a month? Even that's pushing it. Do we have a week? Maybe yes, maybe no. What if we only have today? What if we assume the newcomer is going to relapse tomorrow? And in many cases, this is absolutely true. If the newcomer is going to relapse tomorrow, why not take him or her through all 12 steps today? And that's what was done in the early days. I'm going to take you through the steps today so that you can take somebody through the steps tomorrow. Again, I had another conversion experience, and this one was on September 11th, 2001. That's also written up in this article. And I was in the, most people know where they were when the towers came down. And I was in the hill country of Texas, supposedly to conduct history presentations, but at the second stop, a young person in the back of the room said, was waving his hand and said, Wally, we know who you are, and I don't know if we really want to hear a history presentation today. There's something going on back east, and we don't know what it is. And I didn't know what it was either, because I'd not seen any television. But we're in a lot of pain right now. Will you take us through all 12 steps right now? And for the first time, I did take the entire room through all 12 steps in less than an hour. And I've been doing that for the last 10 years. And I did have the opportunity to put that on DVD just recently, taking everybody through all 12 steps in less than an hour. Much of this I learned from those pioneers at the table who learned it directly from Dr. Bob and James. This is James and Sue Smith Windows, Dr. Bob's daughter, at that very same table where I had my conversion experience in 1989. And now this is 1997, and James is at the table. And he was the last one to speak because he had the longest period of sobriety. And Sue Smith Windows, Dr. Bob's daughter, and James became very close. And she would say every time she closed her eyes listening to James, she heard her father speaking. They had the exact same message. They had a lot of the same mannerisms. And what an honor to see these two people sharing in the miracle of recovery. Sue was not one of us. She always used to describe herself as the oldest Alateen in the world, because she was 17 in 1935 when this all went down. And I know it's a one-day-at-a-time program, but I am looking forward to November 2028 when I can actually sit at that table and tell my story. My turn is in 2028. In 1999, Sue became quite ill, and we almost lost her. And she picked up the phone when she was released from the hospital, and she called me, and she said, of the 2 million people in Alcoholics Anonymous, you're the only person I trust to find a home for Mom and Dad's stuff. What stuff? The stuff that's been in the attic for the last 49 years. And so I flew to Akron, and she brought me up to the attic, and I spent the next 4 days cataloging Dr. Bob and Ann Smith's personal archives. And what an honor it has been to carry Dr. Bob and Ann Smith's message for them. Again, in terms of sponsorship, this is a work in progress. I commend anyone who is willing to work with newcomers. I'm not here to critique or criticize anyone's sponsorship style. Each person has found a way to sponsor that works for them, and I realize that some of the material I am to be presenting to this evening can be considered controversial. I hope I can present this material in a way that won't be seen as confrontational. Controversial, maybe yes. I've got the big, broad shoulders. One thing I learned from Father John Doe, the first Catholic priest in Alcoholics Anonymous, he used to say this in the 1940s. To be criticized in AA, do something, anything. So I'm doing something, and I will be criticized for it, and I understand it, and I accept it. But I try not to be confrontational. Most of the material on sponsorship for this presentation comes from the Big Book and from the AA pioneers of the 1940s and 1950s. And the material that I'm going to be taking out of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm going to present you with what a sponsor is and what a sponsor isn't. And that is one of the handouts that we have. So I'm not going to go into the details. It's actually a 6-page handout in terms of what a sponsor is and what a sponsor is not. But I'm just going to summarize it. A sponsor is described in the Big Book. Again, the word sponsor is not used. It wasn't in vogue at that time. It didn't come into use until the mid-1940s. But what was described as a sponsor in the Big Book was a spiritual advisor, sharing partner, and closed-mouth understanding friend. And again, as part of your handout packet, you have the passages in terms of the sponsor being a spiritual advisor, AA page 63, a sharing partner page 75, and a closed-mouth understanding friend page 74. I'm just going to comment briefly on the one on page 74. We search our acquaintance for a closed-mouth understanding friend. We are very anxious that we talk to the right person. It's important that he be able to keep a confidence that he fully understand and approve what we're driving at, and he will not try to change our plan. Again, for those of you that may have difficulty with the way the Big Book is written, the original title of the book was 100 Men. In 1939, they actually did not know if a woman qualified as an alcoholic. We certainly know better today. As I mentioned in one of the morning sessions, the latest census out of the General Service Office is 45% of all the members of Alcoholics Anonymous today are women, and the way the demographics look like they're trending in the next census, it'll probably be greater than 50%. But then Florence R. comes into the room, and she actually came in for a short period of time in late 1938, and she said, "You can't call this book 100 Men, I'm here. I want you to call the book 100 Men and One Woman." Yay, Florence. Well, they realized they couldn't call this book 100 Men and One Woman, and 100 Men didn't sound so hot after that either. So they went about searching for a new name, and it became Alcoholics Anonymous. Closed-mouth understanding friend, that can be somebody within the 12-step community. We learn in the Big Book that there are people that have legal privilege, and medical doctors are one of them, one of the groups. So we have the clergy parishioner privilege, we have the attorney-client privilege. Again, $1 or more has to change hands for that privilege to kick in, and then the doctor-patient privilege. And yes, there are exceptions to that in terms of mandatory reporting, but we have to keep in mind that as sponsors in Alcoholics Anonymous, we don't have this privilege. So I like to start off every time I sponsor somebody that if there's anything on this inventory that's, that has to do with criminal activity, please don't share it with me. I'll drive you to your attorney's office, we'll take the bus to the church or the synagogue, and you can talk to somebody that has that legal privilege. I'll take you to your psychiatrist's office, but please don't share it with me. One person you can share it with that's sworn to keep a secret is the squirrel. So if you need to have a closed-mouth understanding friend, this actually comes from a seminar that I did in Austin, Texas, and these were the tables for the breakout session, and the squirrel was waiting, so I caught the shot, and it's become part of the Back to Basics tradition. Closed-mouth understanding friend. What a sponsor is not. Many references in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous as to what a sponsor is not. And some of them are: the sponsor is not a banker, a nurse, or an enabler. He or she is neither arrogant nor condescending, an innkeeper, a marriage counselor, a gossip, or a judge of anyone's sex conduct. The sponsor is also not a doctor. We don't play doctor. Minister, crusader, or reformer. Again, many references. A sponsor is not a banker, page 95. A sponsor is not an enabler, page 98 and 132. Sponsor is neither arrogant nor condescending, page 18 and 95. A sponsor is not an innkeeper, page 96. Also on page 97, not a marriage counselor, page 100. Not a gossip, page 125. Not a judge of anyone's sex conduct, page 69. Not a medical practitioner. Sorry, we're getting way ahead here. Page 133, not a minister, page 125, not a crusader or reformer, page 96. I'm only going to talk about the two references having to do with a sponsor is neither arrogant nor condescending. Page 18, the man who is making the approach has no attitude of holier than thou, nothing whatsoever except the sincere desire to be helpful. And on page 95, never talk down to an alcoholic from a moral or spiritual hilltop. Simply lay out the kit of spiritual tools for his inspection, show him how they worked for you. Also, we have some key concepts from the 1940s, and this is also part of the handout packet. Just going to touch these briefly. This comes, again, from those hundreds of old-timers that I interviewed who got sober in the 1940s, starting with the 8 at that table in Dr. Bob's living room. And they led me to other old-timers, and they led me to other old-timers. And I was still working for Fortune 500 companies then, and I just, on my own nickel, would get on an airplane and fly around the country, both the United States and Canada, and interview old-timers who got sober in the 1940s. This is a summary of what they told me. Put no block between the newcomer and step 12. Get the newcomer step 12 as quickly as possible. 2, call the newcomer. Don't know how that got turned around, but in the early days, the sponsor called the newcomer. And back then, most people didn't have telephones, so that meant physically get in a car or bus or your bicycle and go see the newcomer. Read the appropriate parts of the big book to the newcomer. In the early days, this was not just a big book. And I got a miniature version here. This was a big, expensive book. This book costs the equivalent of $95 today. So they weren't being passed around like jelly beans. No, many groups had to pass the basket for weeks and months to get enough money to buy one book. And the home group members would sit and talk about what passages to present to a newcomer and what passages needn't be presented to a newcomer. And so this is where the 50 key paragraphs came from. And the 50 key paragraphs are part of the handout packet. The key paragraphs for taking a newcomer through the steps quickly in one sitting. It's all right there, all 50 of them right there, and you can use them all. You can use, and the key is to use what's appropriate. But I've taken and highlighted those paragraphs in my big book, the 50 key paragraphs, and as I go through the book just at random, you can see that much of this book was not used to take a newcomer through the steps. So why hand a book to a newcomer and ask him or her to read the book before you take them through the work? It was not done in the early days because the book was too expensive. Also, the healing is in the sharing, not in the writing. This is my historical presentation where it borders on heresy, and I'm okay with that. In the early days, the sponsor wrote the 4-step. What is he talking about? You sit down and you do it together. The sponsor asks the questions, the newcomer talks, and the sponsor and the key is to come up with an amends list at the end. That's all it's about. I mean, it wasn't this long, laborious psychological journey that so many people are on today. It was done quickly. You lance the wound now so it can heal now. Today, not tomorrow, because the newcomer may not be here tomorrow. That was the mindset. And again, my first 4-step inventory, Phil said, congratulations, you read page 25 and you remembered 2 words. And that's all I remembered out of those 2 paragraphs. And 4th dimension. And then he said, since you're so good at reading, I'd like you to start on the bottom page. And he took me through steps 2 and 3 right there. And he said, I want you to read from the bottom of page 63 to the end of the chapter, and then tell me what you read. And so I did, and he said the next night, he said, how's it going? I said, well, it's an inventory. He said, good for you, you got it. How's that inventory coming? I said, it's done. He said, really? Yeah, it's a blank sheet of paper. He said, why so? I said, since I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, like 3 days ago, since I admitted I had a problem, I don't have a resentment in the world. He says, well, you got one now, put my name at the top of the list. And you're showing up tomorrow at my house. And I showed up at his house with a blank sheet of paper with his name at the top of it, Phil, F-I-L. That was my entire 4-step inventory. He looked at it and he said, Wally, that's a perfect 4-step inventory. He started asking the questions. I started talking. He came up with the amends list. We role-played the amends, and I took steps 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 in about an hour and a half. Saved my life. Because Phil knew the original program. I didn't know that until many years later. Because he passed away, I never really got a chance once I got into this to actually talk to him directly about it. Other things, assist the newcomer with his or her amends, role play the amends, share guidance with the newcomer. That's why I went out to the car to get my guidance book. Show the newcomer that you're actually practicing step 11 on a regular basis, and then co-sponsor the next newcomer. Most people in the early days were sponsored by more than one person, and I found that to be interesting too. In terms of sharing 11-step guidance, here's James sharing guidance with a friend of mine in Syracuse, New York. They're actually sharing at the Syracuse airport, getting ready to get on an airplane. And James lived in Baltimore, and I lived in Tucson, so we were flying out of Syracuse after having done a weekend workshop there. So we write in the morning, we check it with our sponsor, sharing partner, and Jeffrey and James were sharing partners. Jeffrey and I are still sharing partners, and we review it at night. And the co-sponsorship, very, very important concept, because you're teaching the person that you've just taken through the steps. The assumption is the guy on the right is the sponsor, and the guy on the left is the newcomer sponsor. He's the sponsor in training. And they're working with Joe, and Joe actually looks like he's still under the influence. We'll get to that in a few minutes. That's how it worked, co-sponsors. I just want to take a couple minutes on our history in terms of Bill, Ebby, and Bob. In Bill's story, we learn that Ebby comes to visit Bill in late November 1934, and we learn that Ebby is 2 months sober. When he calls on Bill 2 weeks later, Ebby takes Bill through all the steps in one day. That's what's in our book. Read page 13 and 14. One day, not a week, not a month, not a year, not no steps for the first year. And that's while Bill is in detox at Towns Hospital. Afterwards, Bill becomes of service to others. And this is on page 15. I'm just going to touch on this briefly. My wife and I abandoned ourselves with enthusiasm to the idea of helping other alcoholics to a solution to their problems. I was not too well at the time. What do you hear today? Oh, wait till you get well. Wait till you feel better. Then you can take the steps. Bill is telling us that he didn't feel well even after taking the steps. I was still plagued by waves of self-pity and resentment. This is after his first inventory. This is why we have to do inventories again and again and again. And as I shared in the workshop, I normally do 2 or 3 inventories a week. I mean formal ones, and then I do the daily 10-step one, but I'm talking about actually writing and sharing, because every time I take a newcomer through the steps, I take the steps with him. That's how it works. This sometimes nearly drove me back to drink, but I soon found that when all other measures failed, work with another alcoholic would save the day. Many times I've gone to my old hospital in despair. On talking to a man there, I would be amazingly lifted up and set on my feet. It is a design for living that works in rough times. So Bill W.'s timeline, sobriety date December 11th, 1934, one day before James, which was December 12th, 1934. Again, James got sober in Frederick, Maryland. Bill got sober in New York City. Released from Towns Hospital on December 18th, 1934. Returned to Towns Hospital right after the holidays in January 1935. So Bill was working with other alcoholics within about 2 weeks of his release from detox. So in our story, in Bill's story, we learned that Ebby's sponsoring it 2 months, and now Bill is sponsoring it 2 weeks. In terms of Dr. Bob, this is his story in terms of Dr. Bob's Nightmare, page 180. I spend a great deal of time passing on what I learned to others who want and need it badly. I do it for 4 reasons. 1, a sense of duty. 2, it's a pleasure. 3, because in so doing, I'm paying my debt to the man who took time to pass it on to me. And 4, because every time I do it, I take out a little more insurance for myself against a possible slip. Again, Dr. Bob took 5,000 people through the steps. It's in our conference-approved literature in 10 years. Just do the math. It's 1.3 people a day, and 3 out of 4 of them never drank again. So Dr. Bob's timeline, sobriety date, June 10th, 1935. The next day, Dr. Bob suggests that he and Bill W. work together with other alcoholics. They became AA's first co-sponsors, Bill and Bob. Within days, Dr. Bob and Bill worked with Ernie G. Ernie didn't get it right away. He did get it later. Dr. Bob, at 18 days of sobriety, along with Bill, successfully worked with Bill D., AA number 3, on June 28, 1935. So basically, Abby's sponsoring at 2 months, Bill is sponsoring at 2 weeks, Dr. Bob is sponsoring at 2 days. I love this original 1940s rendition of The Man in the Bed. Many people have seen the newer version of it, but especially the one at the Akron, Ohio Intergroup office, which is leaded glass. It's a beautiful, beautiful piece of work. But this is the original one from the 1940s. Very few people have ever seen this one. But again, the newcomer is being co-sponsored through the work. This is what Bill had to say. By 1960s, Bill had become concerned that AA's success rate was slipping. He wrote this article for the April 1961 issue of the AA Grapevine, and again, that's also part of the handout packet. Though 300,000 have recovered in the last 25 years, maybe 500,000 more have walked into our midst and then out again. We can't well content ourselves with the view that these recovery failures were entirely the fault of the newcomers themselves. Perhaps a great many of them didn't receive the kind and amount of sponsorship they so sorely needed. We didn't communicate when we might have done so, so we AAs failed them. He's putting the onus on sponsors for the failures. And again, once you learn just how simple it is to sponsor somebody through the work, you too can take somebody through the steps and do it on the back of a napkin at Denny's in Canada, and Timmy Hortons. Timmy Hortons AA or Denny's AA is what I do so much of these days. And it is a simple program. And on page 25 and again on page 95, we learn about the simple kit of spiritual tools. What is in the toolkit? Oh, the 12 steps. And no, the 12 steps weren't written. Page 25 was written months and months ahead of There Is a Solution and how it works. What was in the toolkit were the 4 spiritual activities of surrender, sharing, amends, and guidance, the 4-way test to separate self-will from God's will, and 2-way prayer. That's what was in the spiritual toolkit. Surrender, our steps 1, 2, and 3. Sharing, our steps 4, 5, 6, and 7. Amends, our steps 8 and 9. And guidance, our steps 10, 11, and 12. And the test to separate self-will from God's will. Or I call it today, anything that's not from the 1940s, I'll preface. The self-will side I like to call the voice of addiction. The God's will side I like to call the voice of recovery. Again, my take on this. On the God's will side, or the voice of recovery side, that indwelling spirit voice that we all have, it has to pass the test of unselfishness, honesty, purity, and love. That's the and side of the ledger. On the other side of the ledger, the self-will or the voice of addiction, it all is just based in selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, or fear. So it has to pass all 4 on the God's will side. It only has to pass 1 on the self-will side to be considered not the voice of recovery. And the question is, which voice are you listening to? Can you tell the difference between the 2 voices? I can't, but I have a test, so I can separate it. Sometimes I can't figure it out on my own either, so that's why I have sharing partners. I share that with my sponsor. I share it with others so that I can let them give me feedback. Does this pass the test? We also have 2 symbols, especially for newcomers. We have a square as a symbol for addiction. The triangle is a symbol for recovery. And these symbols are very, very important. The square is new. But the triangle came to us from Ann Smith, Dr. Bob's wife. Also, when I'm working with Native American indigenous people, I use the medicine wheel. And what we have is two people traversing the medicine wheel together. And what's on the medicine wheel are the 4 spiritual activities. Because the Native American community, 12 does not compute. 4 is what they understand, because that's what's on the medicine wheel. And we traverse the medicine wheel in terms of the steps of surrender, sharing, amends, and guidance. Again, the pictures are important. The square, I put another square around it, and put some arrows pointing to me. It's all about me, 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 me. It's all about my alcohol. It's all about my property. It's all about my prestige. It's all about my car. It's all about my girlfriend. It's all about me. Now, this step is described in depth and detail in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and it is step 0. That's how we act when we're out there ripping and running. See, now you have a way of determining who's on step 0 when you're in the meetings. It's the people that only want to just talk about themselves. That is, by definition, step 0. To get out of step 0, we have to have our first of psychic changes. We see the world differently. Instead of seeing ourselves separated from the world, we see ourselves as part of the world. First, we admit we have a problem. There's a power greater than us that we're free to call by any name that we believe in or feel comfortable with. And we're not taking these steps for ourselves. We're taking this steps so that we can be of service to others. That's the recovery triangle, which came to us from Ann Smith. The first step hook is on page 52, paragraph 2. This is the way Phil hooked me. Because I didn't know if I was an alcoholic at the time. He said, are you having trouble with personal relationships? Oh, ask my ex-wives. We couldn't control our emotional natures. Oh, just ask all those managers that fired me from these Fortune 500 companies. We're prey to misery and depression. Just ask my psychiatrist. We had a feeling of uselessness. We're full of fear. We're unhappy. We couldn't seem to be able to help other people. I answered yes to all of them. He said, then you're ready to take step 1. And he took me through step 1 on manageability, and that was the first step. Do you concede your innermost self that you have a problem? Yes, okay, done. Let's move on to step 2. And step 2 has a hook too, because when he asked me to read page 25, he said, what did you understand out of those 2 paragraphs? And the only 2 words I caught were 4th dimension. He said, well, is there anything else there? And I said, yeah, the God word is in there. And that's just how I said it. He said, you got a problem with that God word? I said, yes, I do. I am a 100% total non-believer. At that time, I was still blaming God for the Vietnam War. I had a lot of anger issues when I came in. And he said, well, isn't that amazing that you don't have to believe in order for this program to work? And I said, what do you mean you don't have to believe? I actually peeked, Phil. I looked on a couple pages before 25 and a couple pages after 25. There's God on just about every page of this book. He says, no, you don't have to believe. All you have to do is believe that I believe. Do you believe that I believe? I said, yeah, Phil, you told me your story last night. 20 years ago, you crawled out from under a bridge, and now you're president of an oil refinery. I couldn't figure that one out. To me, he looked like he still had just crawled out from under the bridge. I mean, he was a wildcatter out of the oil patch in Bakersfield. I mean, he had skin like leather. He'd been in a lot of bar fights, and so he had gashes and scars and stitches all over his face. And to me, it looked like he just crawled out from under the bridge. But there he was, president of an oil refinery. So he hooked me on the second step, but I believe that you believe. Okay, I do believe. So I gave me the second step question. Do you believe or willing to believe there's a power greater than yourself? Yes, you got it. Now, Wally, for you, the rest of the steps are God as you don't understand him. What a beautiful hook for the rest of the steps for a non-believer like me. My third step prayer. God, as I don't understand you, I offer myself to you to build with me and to do with me as you will. He even took out the these and the thous. But that's how I took the third step prayer. God, as I don't understand you. And it worked. And then he moved me on to the fourth step. We talked about that. What we see in the 1940s, the fourth step was a simple assets and liabilities checklist. Because these were business people, Bill and others were well versed in the business world, and the equation for double entry bookkeeping equals assets equals liabilities plus owner equity. And there were many checklists in use in the 1940s and even into the 1950s, and There are 8 liabilities in the big book: resentment, fear, selfishness, dishonesty, inconsideration, jealousy, suspicion, bitterness. The beginners' meetings from the late 1940s used 8, slightly different. The 12 and 12, which came along in 1952, also listed 8 liabilities. Again, there's no mention of the 3-4 column inventory on page 65 in the 12 and 12 because nobody was using it at the time. The only thing that's in there is the assets and liabilities checklist. Dr. Bob, in the story, he sold himself short, takes Earl T through the steps in his office in 3 to 4 hours, and he also used 8 liabilities. We take the inventory sheet, we fold the sheet over so the assets are hidden from view. We only deal with the liabilities on step 4, and then the key is to just do it together. Don't leave the newcomer alone during step 4 or even step 9. And that's what they did. They just kept them under their wing. Too many suicides in the 12-step community, too much relapse in the 12-step community. They didn't let you out of their sight until you were well established in steps 10, 11, and 12. And again, together you come up with an amends list, and here on this amends list, we see the 4 types of amends: direct amends, living amends, amends in kind, and letters. Those were the amends, and that was, again, only took a matter of maybe an hour or 2. We did the work. He handed me my inventory. Actually, mine was done on just an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, and he handed me my amends list. It wasn't this formal. He just asked the questions, and he kept writing, and I kept talking. We did the 6-step question: are you now ready to let the God that you don't understand remove from you all the things which you've admitted are objectionable? Yes, you've taken step 6. 7-step prayer: again, God, as I don't understand you, I'm now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. Then we got into the amends, and the blocks are removed that are separating us from the power and separating us from other people. First, we make amends to those we've harmed, and we forgive those who have harmed us. As I mentioned, the type of amends: direct amends, living amends, amends in kind, and amends to those who cannot be seen. And the payoff. And I love this recovery triangle. I am so grateful for Ann Smith for providing this to us. In terms of the arrows going in all directions, step 11 is just a commitment to do steps 4 through 9 on a daily basis. The arrows going from the power and from the power back to me, Ann described as 2-way prayer. Prayer and meditation, which is what became our 11th step. But if you see the arrows going, okay, from the power through me to you, that's how we do our 12-step work. We let God do the talking as we take other people through the work. We do our 12-step work by letting God do the talking. So the arrows go from the power through me to you. Ann gave us another concept called 3-way prayer, where we hear the power speak to us through other people, whether it be at a meeting or waiting for a bus or reading a book or watching a movie, something we see on television. The power can speak to us through other people. And so the arrows go from the power through me, through you to me. We can petition the power to intercede in other people's lives. Other people can petition the power to intercede in our lives. The arrows are going in all directions, and that's what the sunlight of the Spirit looks like. Then we just have some questions to wrap it up. 10-step question: will you continue to take personal inventory and continue to set right any mistakes as you go along? Yes. And then we get right into the 11th step. I gave away all the ones I had this morning, the 11-step guidance meeting format that uses the big book, 11-step guidance meeting format. But it is online, and I have my business cards there with the website. So you can download the 11-step guidance meeting format. The only modifications we've made, this came from Ann Smith, it came from Dr. Bob's living room, it came from the summer of 1935. It does have 2-way prayer, 3-way prayer. I think it's the most powerful meeting format within the 12-step community. My home group in Tucson is an 11-step guidance meeting. And we sponsor 3 beginners meetings around town, and we do a lot of H&I work. But that is our core meeting, is an 11-step guidance meeting. And in terms of sharing guidance, again, everybody that went to the workshop got a guidance book. And what I like to say on that, we write guidance in the morning, we share it during the day, we review it at night. Again, if I haven't written anything in the morning, it's real easy to do the nightly review. See, I did everything God asked me to do today. Everything. 100%. Yay me. Yay me. But if I've actually written something down, I have something to review with my sponsor, my sharing partners, and my sponsees. I share with people throughout the world every day who call in. And we have something to review at night. Because again, we may think some of this passes the test and somebody else may not. So it's important that we write our guidance, share our guidance, and review our guidance. In terms of my guidance, I did mention that in 2003 I was diagnosed with terminal incurable stage 4 cancer. I actually had to stop working in 2000 because of it. They didn't actually catch it until they did exploratory surgery in 2003. And in 2000 is when I started living on faith and prayer, and I've been living on faith and prayer ever since. And boy, what a humbling experience that is. But it did teach me to say thank you a lot. I sleep on people's couches. I sleep in their spare bedrooms. They pay the gas to get me to the next town. I've been living on faith and prayer since 2000, so I do know it works. Plus a VA check starting in 2003. But in 2003, when I got the terminal incurable cancer diagnosis, I got a second opinion, I got a third opinion. They all said the same thing. It was found through exploratory surgery. They had the biopsies, they had everything. And my first oncologist said, Wally, do 3 things. Fill out your last will and testament, clean out the garage, and take your last trip. And my last trip was to Detroit, Michigan to say goodbye to Alcoholics Anonymous, which I did on audio tape. It is recorded. In fact, I was just taped in Detroit 4 weeks ago by the same taper who taped me when I said goodbye to AA. James H. was there, and he's 95 years old, and he's not saying goodbye. He's going to carry on. After the weekend workshop, the plane left Detroit 2 hours late. When it got to Phoenix, the Phoenix to Tucson plane had already taken off, so they put me up at the Hilton Hotel in Phoenix. So don't do that anymore either. But this is 6/23/03 at 2 o'clock in the morning. Do not let anyone poison you. You were poisoned in Vietnam. Seek non-toxic treatment for the damage caused by Agent Orange. This is the guidance that saved my life. And this is my challenge to you. If you practice this long enough, somewhere along the line, you will receive guidance that will either save your life or put you in a position to save somebody else's life. And I think that's a guarantee. Not only did I receive this guidance, which saved my life, yes, I did turn down the chemo based on that guidance. Again, I had to share this with numerous sharing partners. I did not know how to interpret this. But they said, just go ahead and turn down the chemo. And I said to my oncologist that Thursday, because that's when they're putting the pick in to start the chemo, and I said, I believe in two-way prayer. I believe that God can speak to us. I believe that God spoke to me at 2 o'clock in the morning in Hilton Hotel parking lot in Phoenix, Arizona. He's looking up at the ceiling, oh my God, another Vietnam nutcase, and writes me up as a non-cooperative patient, refuses conventional treatment for his illness, and says, go home and enjoy the last few months of your life. And I did. I went home and I didn't get sicker. I started feeling better and better and better. In October, I received guidance, and most of my guidance are shopping lists. Go here, go there. And in October, I received guidance, donate your body to science. Found out there was a clinical trial for my cancer. It was at the National Cancer Institute in Bethesda, Maryland. I'd just gotten my first check from the VA, so I had money, and I jumped on an airplane and I flew to the National Cancer Institute in Bethesda, Maryland to donate my body to science, and they wouldn't take me. They said, yes, Wally, in April you were terminal and curable stage 4, but it's now October and we can't find the cancer. And they still basically can't find the cancer 8 years later. I've had a miracle healing, and I have no other way to look at it. I mean, a spontaneous remission, okay, I can go there. But for me, it was just the miracle of miracles, because God still has work for me to do. And being here was part of that plan, that master plan. I also received guidance that saved my mother's life. I received this on October 16th of 2007. Your mom's not dying, she's suffering from anorexia, sound the alarm. Her doctor had called me and said, your mom's on her last legs, she's only got a couple of weeks to live. I received this guidance, I called her doctor back and I said, you know, mom's suffering from anorexia. And she said, well, let me look into that. She called me back and said, you know, your mom's lost 10% of her body weight in less than 6 months. She actually qualifies as an anorexic, and there's a medicine for anorexia. I didn't know any of this. It's called Megace, and I guess they use it for terminally ill AIDS patients, and they put her on Megace, and she went from 74 pounds to 102 pounds, and she lived another 2 years. Yes, guidance will save your life or give you the opportunity to save somebody else's life if you practice it long enough. And 12-step question, very simple, will you carry this message to others? I'm going to close this presentation with a magazine article. Many people have read about the Liberty magazine, September 30th, 1939, and the Saturday Evening Post article, March 1st, 1941. Is anybody familiar with Look magazine article, June 26, 1945? This is really rare stuff. Oh, okay, I'm really glad I'm presenting it tonight. This is Look's unposed pictures record the end of an epic binge and its treatment by Alcoholics Anonymous, case history of an alcoholic. This guy named Joe, he's drinking himself into oblivion one more time. He's been in and out of jobs and in and out of relationships for the last 10 years. He's just lost another job, and he's drinking himself into oblivion one more time. And he calls Alcoholics Anonymous. And they send 2 people out to 12-step him, and Look magazine sends a photographer. Not sure about the legal ramifications of this today, but this is actually what went down in 1945. And we showed this before. The 2 people come and they tell their story, and Joe, still to me, looks like he's under the influence. And he decides to go to detox. Until they get him in the car, then he decides he's not going, and that's in the frame on the left. And so they actually have to throw him in the car and manhandle him, and on the frame on the right, he's actually checking into the detox, and here's a close-up of that. One eye open, one eye closed. I think he's still under the influence. Here he is being put to bed by one of his sponsors. That's actually, the word sponsor was used here in 1945. And here he is looking up at his sponsor the next day, and I think by the look on his face, he's saying, who the hell are you and where the hell am I? But again, in this case, the word sponsor had a specific connotation. It meant that you bankrolled this person's treatment. That's what sponsor meant in the mid-1940s. You paid for his treatment. So these people have a financial vested interest in this guy. And here he is checking out of the detox, and the caption under this says, physically restored after 3 days, Joe waves goodbye to his nurse. In fresh clothes provided by his sponsor, they not only paid for detox, they bought him a suit. Whoa, I don't see that very often today. In fresh clothes provided by his sponsors, and again, he was sponsored by 2, I mean, there is with the S, he looks and feels a new man for the first time. He faces the future with hopes of recovery. And then we see Joe meeting with his sponsor, maybe doing a 4th and 5th step over lunch, maybe talking about 9th step amends. Here's Joe attending his beginners meetings. Actually, well, we do know where this photograph was taken. This is the speaker meeting in the front room, and they conducted all 4 beginners meetings simultaneously in the back rooms. So even if you missed a week, you could always go back and get caught up. And so Joe is greeting the speaker meeting, then he'll go in the back room and take his steps. Here's Joe. He got a job at a coffee roasting plant, maybe the equivalent of Starbucks today. And guess who's coming to visit him? His sponsors. Why? Because they want to make sure they get their money back, among other reasons. But the last one, I mean, if you say a picture's worth 1,000 words, this picture to me is worth the millions upon millions of recoveries that have occurred within the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. Yeah. To me, this says it all. This is it, ladies and gentlemen. This is the whole program in one picture. And the caption is, the cycle of AA therapy is complete when Joe returns to the sanitarium to visit another who needs help. He now has a rough grasp of AA's principles, knows that helping another alcoholic is a technique for preserving his own sobriety. For the first time in 10 years, he feels he has found a path to a decent life. It's too early to tell whether he'll stay on it, but AA's record of 75% recovered is in his favor. And I just want to close in the West. We don't say goodbye. It's until we meet again. And thank you for letting me share. Thank you for letting me share.
Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.